This is a preview of our premium episode number 5, featuring an extended interview with Sludge co-founder David Moore. To listen to the full episode and all of our premium content, become a supporter on Patreon for $5 a month. That's patreon.com/Gilded Age. We only allow fake advertisements on our podcast, so we rely entirely on your support. The Gilded Boys are grateful for your generosity.
David, can you talk about a little bit about how that process has worked out for like public infrastructure and like the budget process behind closed doors? Can you talk about how that has worked out in terms of funding public infrastructure and hospitals and whatnot?
So I can. There's so many ways into that question, and one of the ways that good government groups and progressive advocates and like community progressives have asked this question is, why doesn't New York have nice stuff? The tax rates.
We have a new bridge named Andrew Cuomo.
Yeah,
that's pretty nice.
A big shiny bridge. I go every night to look at it. That's really funny. So there's a lot of budget experts and good government groups point out that at New York's tax rates, we're comparable to a lot of social democracies that offer things like truly universal free of charge healthcare, that offer really robust social services and childcare, and more. And so when you look around New York, of course, and you see that the state's single payer initiative has been stymied for years, public transit's a mess, and there's certainly no green jobs community center near me that people can access. There's so much need in the public school system and more around New York. And so the question is, how has the budget been being allocated for the past 10 years? Let's just look at that time frame under Governor Cuomo. And one answer that people have been pointing to is that Governor Cuomo designed the system in conjunction with what was called the Senate IDC to be able to control the state budget and give the window dressing appearance of dedication to progressive priorities without actually enacting them in the budget and without actually passing legislation. Here's a simple.
The IDC is the Independent Democratic Conference, I believe. And,
that's correct.
Just to give folks a little update, I believe there were 6 or 7 or 8 members before the 2018 elections.
That's right.
Well, I guess through 2018, and these are Democrats who caucus with Republicans, work with Republicans a lot, at least on legislation. And Cuomo was very happy about that, and he worked with them too. So. We'll probably get to this, but a lot of them were knocked off in 2018 in the state elections by progressives, and that could be part of the reason why we actually have a public financing package coming down the road.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly where we're headed. So, the IDC was founded in 2010 with just 4 members who were upset about their relative influence and it grew to 8, which was a considerable amount in the 63-member New York State Senate, and overall. The sort of the way I describe the IDC's role in the process is that for Governor Cuomo, it gave him the ability to signal that he was in favor of actual progressive legislation, but without actually following through on it or being responsible for raising the revenue from his campaign donors that it would have required, or else greater sort of tapping into the subsidies that he gave to businesses that lobby the state for business. So, if you're a person in power in Albany and you don't want a single payer healthcare system to pass New York State, it's as simple as can be. It's not a hugely diabolical process, although it's kind of diabolical. It's pretty diabolical, maybe. In short, something can pass the assembly, that's fine. As long as you control the Senate, the bill can go into a Senate committee and die and never come out, because the Senate did not operate according to rules where a majority vote in the Senate would advance bills out of the committee. So all the time between the IDCs, as its membership slowly grew over the course of the past decade, a huge amount, over 24 progressive bills covering everything from immigration to women's rights to lots and lots of other really important community justice and equity issues, all just languished and died in the state Senate. And Cuomo was able to periodically get them in the headlines, but without having to actually take responsibility for raising the revenue.
So would that dynamic would work Cuomo would push these things forward knowing that they would fail, so he could say that he was pushing for progressive causes? Is that what you're saying the IDC's role was?
he would often point, that's about it, but it would often be advanced by issue groups, real estate grassroots groups, and real estate community advocates who were advancing it through the assembly. And where there was a Democratic majority in the assembly, they could be able to advance it. But it would run up aground in the Republican Senate. So finally, in 2018, this became too much for. Of course, it was too much for the state's health and well-being. But the Democratic voters in the state finally overtook the Senate IDC in 2018 and knocked it off enough to be able to take control back of the New York State Senate. And so in 2018, coming out of that, there was finally the momentum and the conditions needed for advocates to take action on campaign finance reform. And so here we are now, looking ahead to what started happening in 2019 with the public financing bill.